what you were saying, disclosing on application forms, my recommendation would actually be no.
Okay.
And no is not to deny who you are. It's not to pretend that you're normal. It's not to pretend that you're somebody else. But sometimes what happens is that in the experiences that I've had individually and that I know other people have had, it's either not an issue at all, or sometimes it's a cause for discrimination. Because when you disclose that you're autistic or you have ADHD, you're setting yourself up, because what happens is, as positive as I might be about my autism, which is what we should be aiming for that,
right,
is to accept who we are, to love who we are. But when we're giving that information to somebody else, it then becomes their issue. What do they know, or what do they think they know about autism?
Right.
What do they think they know about dyspraxia or ADHD, for instance?
Right.
And that is where the issue comes along.
Right.
Until somebody, somewhere, until society changes and being autistic is dead sexy and everybody wants to employ us, then you are going to be faced with other people's misconceptions of what autism's all about.
Right.
So you can go out there and say everything that you're great at, everything that you want to do, without saying autism,
right,
or without saying ADHD.
Right.
And I don't think my sons disclose when they go for job interviews. I don't think they disclose when they on the application form. I don't know what the law is over there about disclosing disabilities. Over here, we don't have to, unless it's going to have a significant impact on our job.
I think it's the same here.
Yeah, sometimes that significant impact that it has on our job means that we're just amazing at it.
Right.
I think what people really mean is if it's going to have a detrimental impact on your job.
Right.
So I think that's when you have to kind of be a bit more open about it. Although why anybody would apply for a job if they physically know they can't do it?
Right, right. These job postings are just sort of created on the fly. They're created really quickly. And sometimes it's not detailed enough for a person to really understand what might be required of them. That's one. And then I think the other piece of it is sometimes I've been told that if it wasn't disclosed in their application that they have autism or Asperger's or whatever it may be, if they come back later and say that they do have that disability, they're not qualified for the accommodations. So that's another thing I've heard.
That's quite a tricky one as well, because yes, it can raise issues, but sometimes if you disclose while you're actually started in the job,
right,
that's quite often somebody's excuse to get rid of you.
That's true. Right. And has that happened to you?
The job was for, in the UK, a very large charity for people who have learning disabilities, who are autistic, who have complex needs.
Oh, wow.
So it was only a support worker role.
Yeah.
And obviously, I think I'm autistic, therefore it helps me to understand other autistic people on a deeper level.
Definitely.
So you would think that would be seen as absolutely brilliant. You can help us to understand these people who maybe have learning difficulties, they have greater communication difficulties than I appear to have.
Yeah.
But so I said nothing. And they said, well, we'll let you know in a couple of days. I got home, I hadn't even taken my coat off, and I got a phone call saying, we'd like to offer you a job. I'm thinking,
wow.
well, okay, well, I wasn't expecting a phone call till at least next week. And I'm standing in my dining room with my coat on. I've literally got home from the interview.
Right.
Bearing in mind that the job was so close, I
Right.
could walk it there. It was 10 minutes walk away.
I
So
see.
in between me leaving the interview and getting home and getting the phone calls, 15 minutes. So I
Right.
thought, well, this is great. Well, already by the time I'd gone on to the training course, I remembered why I didn't like working in supported living.
Oh,
It's like,
no.
what have I done? So, because, if your face doesn't fit, your face doesn't fit. Like, I have got one of those faces and I'm just one of those, I'm clearly very different,
Right.
and people pick up on this. And I started in the house that I was working in, and it just came into conversation. I was starting to get rankled by one of my teammates talking about autistic people, and autistic people are this and they're this and they're this and they're this, and I thought, this is just not right. This is just incorrect information that you're telling me. So I slipped it in there. I said, well, actually, I've got 2 autistic sons who were diagnosed after me. I'm autistic. I wasn't diagnosed till I was 44. And still, half of me is so naively thinking that people are going to go, oh, wow, amazing, that's brilliant, and be like astonished and thrilled for me. And not the case.
Wow.
Which is very unfortunate. Well, I hadn't been in the job very long, and because because my face didn't fit, I clearly wasn't like the other women. I clearly wasn't going to join their little group and gossip and sit around doing nothing very much. It tends not to go down very well. So I got called into a meeting. A few issues, according to the letter, had arisen.
Okay.
I didn't know in advance what they were. And most of it was gossip.
Oh.
Why am I even being called into a meeting when this is clearly gossip?
Right.
But people are strange creatures. And one of the issues that they said, my manager and the assistant manager sat opposite me. And the manager said, if you disclose your autism on the application form or at the interview, we wouldn't have considered you suitable for the job.
Wow.
No disability discrimination on the go there, is there? And that is purely based on what they think they know about autism and what they think they know about me.
Right.
About an individual they've only seen there on paper. Now, I think, great, be open about it, be honest about it, celebrate your diversity.
Right.
We've got to be positive about who we are. It doesn't necessarily mean that other people are.
Right.
And what little knowledge they have can be very, very dangerous. And this could be creating a barrier.
Right.
So get in there, get the job.
Right.
How you support people when they get into the job, if they suddenly say 6 months down the line, everything's going terrifically well,
Right.
and then they just say, well, actually I'm autistic, and then the knives come out and people start to get really awful, and I've heard situations where life has been deliberately made difficult for people. I come from I'm part of the autistic community.
Right.
And I talk to other autistic people. Now, I know other people who were late diagnosed, like I was. They've been in the same job, 20 years or more. They get their diagnosis, they disclose to their employer, and suddenly the employer is deliberately making life difficult for them.
Oh, no.
Even though they've been there for 20 years, fantastic work record, they've done an amazing job, no issues whatsoever. Suddenly, they get the diagnosis and they're being moved from the quiet area in the office
Mm-hmm.
right into the middle of the office where you've got people walking past. It's noisy, the air conditioning's loud, you're being interrupted, wow. You've got phones ringing in 25 different directions, and life is being deliberately made to be awkward for them, and they're basically bullied out of the workplace.
I see. And what is it that you think employers know or feel about autism that makes them do this or behave in this way?
Essentially, I think in all of us, we are a little bit afraid and a little bit suspicious of people who are different.
Right, right.
And I think an awful lot of people culturally can understand that. I deliver an awful lot of training to very mixed groups. People come from different countries, different cultures, different religious backgrounds. So I'm not addressing the white British workforce. We can have people there who come from European countries, they come from African countries. Mm-hmm. You know, they literally, and they are the people who grasp it most of all, because they've understood on some level what it's like to be sidelined, to be talked over, to be discriminated against. So they're the ones who grasp it most readily.
Right.
I think what employees need to do is have a look at the experience and say, what if it was me in this situation?
Right.
If this was me, if this was my child, what would I like to see happen? Is this treatment, is this behaviour acceptable?
Right.
If I don't like, if I wouldn't want to be subjected to this myself, then why would I do it to anybody else? So I put this across time and time and time again in the training that I deliver. Mm-hmm. Is this actually okay? How would you like it if it was you?
Right. Yeah, and I think that difficulty of putting yourself in someone else's shoes is really what, makes management go well or just, pulls it down. And unfortunately, so many people aren't able to bring that empathy into their work. And so often I see that it becomes about the bottom line. And I think it was really interesting what you said earlier about when you disclose something, it becomes their problem and it becomes about what they know and they understand about autism rather than what it actually is,
But why is it a problem?
Right.
If you take the employee who's been in the workplace for a good number of months,
yeah, that's shocking,
or a good number of years, and they've been performing well, then why is it suddenly a problem?
Right.
But I hear an awful lot of horror stories, an awful lot of just appalling things that happen. Now, for life to get better, for opportunities to be opened up, the employer has to see the bottom line benefit to them.
Right.
And the bottom line benefit to an employer is within the diversity parameters itself.
Right.
Because a lot of people are asking for out-of-the-box thinkers.
Right.
They want somebody with novel approaches. And basically, what they're describing is everything that autistic people are good at.
Right, right.
They want people who pay attention to detail. Now, we're good at paying attention to detail.
Right.
We're often, in our field of expertise, we can spot errors and mistakes way quicker than our non-autistic counterparts.
Right.
Now, if we can do that and do it quickly, that is saving an awful lot of time and money.
Right.
And that's a massive strength in the workplace.
Yep.
So if we're working together on a project, that's two different perspectives.
Right.
And it isn't necessarily going to cause conflict. And I think this may be what people might be worried about sometimes.
That makes sense. So when you've already been hired, what are some things that you think employers are doing well in terms of keeping that retention, keeping people with autism employed for a longer time? And do you think that there are enough efforts towards that right now?
Right. The best, the very, very best thing that can ever happen is that it's like nothing. It's, I'm autistic. Yeah, right. Can you do the job? Yeah. Yeah, right. That is the absolute best way of it. That's inclusion.
Right.
It's like, okay.
Yeah.
You have hair. Why would that be an issue? It should be nothing.
Right.
I live for the day when all of those equal opportunity monitoring forms are just, why does it matter? Why would it matter?
Right.
You know, it shouldn't matter how old we are. It shouldn't matter what our ethnic background is. It shouldn't matter what colour we are.
Definitely.
You know, what should matter is that, can you do this job? And I think if employers are going to be looking to recruit neurodiverse talent, they're going to have to look at themselves in a very clear way. What's the job? Who do we want?
Right.
And that's all they need to know.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if this person doesn't make loads of friends in the workplace.
For sure.
It doesn't matter that they don't have water cooler conversations. It doesn't. All that matters is they can do the job and do the job well.
Right.
And all of those other things, those unwritten things, all that social stuff,
right,
seems to be at least as important to some people. And it really shouldn't be like that. What do you want somebody to do?
Right.
Like, for instance, my youngest son lost a job. Well, the manager let him go. He got a job. He'd been there a few weeks. He's an exceptionally hard worker. He's a great salesman. Now, how you can be an autistic salesman, they don't sound as though that they ought to go very well together, because don't we have communication difficulties?
Right.
Well, maybe they're just different.
Yeah.
Well, he'd spend all of his day on the phone, ringing up contacts, ringing up old customers, saying, I'm new to the company, I'm going through records here, it's been a while since you've been into the showroom, how are you getting on with your car? We've got some nice, we've got a newer model in, why don't you come in? We've got one here waiting for you if you want to come and have a look. And he was generating leads, he was getting people in through the door. And within no time at all, he was their best earner, their top salesman, right? They let him go.
Wow.
Why did they let him go? You don't seem to be fitting in with the rest of the team. He didn't want to fit in with the rest of the team, because what the rest of the team spent most of their day doing, yeah, they'd make a few phone calls, but most of the time they'd spend it round the coffee machine.
Right.
Talking about women and football.
I see. Yeah. Wow, that's so disappointing to hear. Do you feel that there are any companies that you know of or that you've heard of that are doing it right?
They're either really looking to employ autistic people or neurodivergent people, and they're going to do, right, we need this mindset in our workplace. That means they can already see the benefits.
Right.
So that it's something that they're actually going out looking for. Right. They're just going to say, okay, we want you to do the job and we're going to make it comfortable for you.
Right.
Why wouldn't it be one of the perks?
Right.
Like people get cinema vouchers, free health insurance.
Right, right. Definitely.
Buying a specially adapted chair or moving somebody's desk to the other side of the office costs nothing.
Right. And that's the other thing, right? Like when people talk about accommodations, there's this misunderstanding that it has to be so complex.
No, it doesn't.
But it doesn't. It's very simple things that, you know, probably are already happening in the workplace, right?
Yeah. I had a very interesting, somebody brought something up in one of my training sessions, must have been 2-3 years ago. And I was there running a workshop, and she just happened to say that one of the guys on our team, she was his manager, one of the guys on our team's autistic, and we didn't know. I think he might have been diagnosed late or something like that, so he was already in situ. And what they were finding was that he was really struggling in his job because they give him a list of tasks to do, and it was getting overwhelming for him because he thought he had to do everything all in one go. So what they did for him was they broke it down into tasks. Right, we want you to do this task, then we want you to do that task.
Right.
So he got the work prioritised. As a result, he became like dozens of times more productive. So they made that little adaptation, and as a result, he became far more productive.
Right.
His anxiety decreased. He was a lot happier. Of course, his manager was a lot happier because the guy was achieving so much more.
Right. Right.
And that didn't cost anything. It's one of those things where you can either do 10 jobs badly or one job at a time well.
Right. Definitely. What do you think is going to happen with just autism hiring initiatives with everything that's going on with COVID?
I like to think that it could become a lot more straightforward. I think if employers, recruiters actually learn something massively positive from this, they could actually see that, yes, interviews can be conducted via Zoom.
Right. Right.
So why not? Nobody really wants to go for an interview that's 300 miles away. They might be willing to relocate.
Of course.
But why travel for 300 miles for a job interview that you might not get? So why not have it via Zoom?
Right.
Why not have people working? You come in and do an hour on the team that you might potentially be working on, or get people together and work on an issue. If we're making furniture, then we've got to work on a team to produce a piece of a nice upholstered armchair. Right. Somebody has to design it. Somebody has to build the frame. Somebody cuts the wood. It's not one person make one chair.
I agree.
It all has to be done. So somebody's designed it. Somebody's cut the wood. Somebody's put it together. Somebody else comes and puts the upholstery on, and then somebody else covers it. So that's a team effort to produce that one armchair. Why not do that in in an interview?
Right.
How would you go about doing this? This is a problem that we come across. How will we do it? It's something that they may have come across themselves, and it's an old problem that's solved long ago. But why not do that?
Definitely. And I think that's a great way for the team to get to know the person and understand that they're able to do the work, right?
Yeah, it's actually doing the job.
Right. Definitely. I agree. I think there's so much to that. And, how do you think interview processes should be changed to be more inclusive?
That's always quite a tricky one to answer, because you can't speak for everybody in all situations.
Of course.
But make it obvious and make it straightforward. Be very, very specific about what you're looking for. And whatever you're doing in your interview process, keep it specific to the job role.
Right.
Because it's going to really lose somebody who goes for an interview for a job that involves high levels of concentration and lone working, to, for instance, suddenly find themselves having to interact in a team when that's actually not part of the role. So it's not relevant.
Right.
Social skills aren't relevant for all jobs, so don't put them in the interview.
I see. That's definitely a good point. Yeah. Okay. And if you had just based on your own experiences. And if you had the opportunity to tell an employer how to create a really inclusive program for neurodiverse talent, what are some things that you think should absolutely be on that list?
Absolutely on that list would be to work with the community that they want to recruit from.
Right.
And they could be it could be from the neurodiverse community.
Mm-hmm.
It could be from a particular ethnic background.
Right.
You might be a food manufacturer. You're looking to create a range of Indonesian recipes.
Right.
Well, who would be the best people to help you to develop that range of recipes, that
Right.
range of food products? It's the people in the community.
Right.
So if you're looking to make accommodations for your autistic employee, then you've got to go to the autistic community. Doing a lazy bit of a Google search isn't really going to cut it.
Right.
Because all you're going to read about generally is a list of deficits,
Mm-hmm.
a list of things that autistic people struggle with, that we might not be very good at. You're not looking for what people are bad at when you're looking to recruit somebody.
Right.
When you're recruiting somebody, like I'm just making this up as I go along now, but to me it's obvious.
Right.
When you're looking to recruit somebody, you're looking for what people are good at, not what they're bad at.
Right.
So why not look for what people are good at?
Right.
So ask people in the community, how many like first-time fathers, you know, their partner, they're expecting their first baby together, and they don't really know one end of a baby from another. They don't know which bit to fill and which bit to empty, you know. So it's kind of useful if they've got another guy around who's just gone through this first-time fatherhood thing, you know.
Right. Right.
Yeah, okay, well, they're not going to admit that they passed out on the delivery room floor or anything, and they're going to make it sound probably a bit disgusting, but we were okay in the end, you know, whatever.
Right.
So involve people.
Right.
Get people to know each other.
Definitely. And do you feel that, you know, I mean, I know earlier you said that you have heard so many horror stories. Do you feel that the disability community and the neurodiverse community is being heard? And if not, you know, why do you think that is?
I wouldn't say it's not being heard. It's not being heard loud enough. It's
Okay.
not being heard often enough. And it's not just the being heard.
Right.
It's the actually doing something about it.
And what do you think companies should be doing better?
Listen more.
Listen more.
And listen more to the people who it mostly involves.
Right.
For instance, their employees. Especially important if you have an employee who's recently been diagnosed.
Right.
Well, that's brilliant. Okay, fine. Is there anything that we need to know?
Right.
They're the same person they were the day before when you didn't know.
Right. And it's funny how quickly that changes, right? Like between one day and the other of finding out about someone's diagnosis, there's like all this other stuff that comes into your lens that wasn't there before, which is, it's so tricky. It's so unfortunate.
That everybody that we meet has the potential to teach us something. Are we willing to learn?
Right. Yeah. Couldn't agree more with that, for sure.
So maybe we ought to, I generally think that a lot of people should think bigger.
Mm-hmm.
And should be a bit more broad.
Right.
In their outlook.
Right.
Just because somebody doesn't look the same as me, walk or talk the same as me, or live my kind of lifestyle,
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean that person is in any way inferior.
I agree.
It just means that we can learn something different here.
Right.
Because we find ourselves in a situation that we don't know anything about. We've jolly well got to learn.
Right.
And what a great opportunity for your personal development if you hire me as an autistic person and you learn way more than you could ever have imagined.
Right. And like you said, you can't find everything on a Google search. You have to sort of live through the experience and be a part of the experience for you to really grow from it, Definitely.
But you're absolutely right. And that's why it's essential to talk to the employee. And that's where you have to, that's where you have to apply your empathy button.
Right.
Because you have to think, well, why didn't you just come and ask me?
Right.
Why did you go off and do your Google search?
Right.
You have to be able to do that.
Yeah.
We get told the myth.
Right.
The myth is that autistic people lack empathy.
Right.
But isn't it a two-way street?
Definitely. 100%.
Yeah, because we need to hear it from the other person's point of view, from their experience, what they want.
Mm-hmm.
We wouldn't really want to be thinking that somebody's running off asking everybody else apart from me
right.
what I need.
Yeah. And have you personally had an experience on your own where a leader was asking you personally some questions of how to understand this better or how to support you better? And what was that experience like, if you have had one?
I have been asked.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So somebody at an interview says, are there any adjustments or any reasonable adjustments that we can make? You kind of half think they're just ticking their box.
Right.
So what we need to do is be able to say, well, at the moment, I'm not really sure, but once I've started doing the job, if anything crops up, I promise I'll let you know.
Yeah.
But far too often you see that the diagnosis is disclosed, suddenly becomes some kind of license to dig up or make a case against somebody or find excuses like reasons to fire them or something like that. Right. I have had more meetings questioning my work methods and the way I present myself, and basically all of the little bullet points in the letter have been autistic traits.
I see.
So it gets a little bit tricky to actually sack somebody, right? Because then it's disability discrimination, because what they've done is written down a list of autistic traits.
Right. And do you think that happens a lot, or what is your...
I would imagine it probably does. Mm-hmm. It definitely does with the people that I've personally spoken to.
Right.
And I always say that as an individual, I'm an individual and I'm unique. It doesn't necessarily mean that my experiences are, because right. The more people I talk to, the more I find out that my experiences are often things that are shared with a hell of a lot of other people.
Right.
So if we were sitting round a campfire together and somebody would say, have you experienced this? It'd go round, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. The different personal stories might be different, but we're basically talking about the whole same thing.
Right.
So if I went on on social media and said, has anybody else been sacked from their job basically because they're autistic? You'd have story after story after story after story.
Yeah, I found the same, unfortunately.
So, well, although for you as an individual that might not be your experience, mm-hmm. But basically what I'm saying is sounding awfully familiar.
Right, right.
Yeah, it's sounding familiar to you.
Definitely.
So you see, it's my individual experience, yeah, but it isn't unique.
Right. I understand. Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you for having this conversation. This has been so enlightening. And I'm so glad that you are, able to share your experiences, and people can learn from this,
Well, it's absolutely fine. What's the point of having a diagnosis at the age of 44, which is the age I was when I got diagnosed?
Right.
And just going like, yeah, all right then.
Right.
If my experience can help other people, then the pain I've been through is going to be worth something. It's going to be meaningful. So,
For sure.
yeah.
All right. Well, thank you.